Hello and welcome to Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, where I discuss the future of the Niger-Delta region, humongously blessed with hydrocarbon resources. Every week, we give time to reflecting on topics relevant to the development of the region and her people. On this episode, nothing changes that much as I'm here to focus once again on how to take the region to a more promising future. In this case, one with good health. Now, the program is sponsored by the operator of the NNPC SPDC, Total Energies Achip joint venture, the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, headquartered here in Port Harcourt. Thanks for joining. I'm Adedayo Ilushake. Topic for this edition of Canvas is a very important one, a crucial one, and one that's quite timely as well, considering what's happening globally at the moment. Our topic is understanding HMPV, recent concerns, and what you need to know. Now, we'll be diving into the topic of Human Metapneumovirus, or HMPV. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Read my guess shortly. That's HMPV, a respiratory virus that has recently raised concerns due to a surge in cases. We'll explore what HMPV is, how it spreads, and the symptoms to watch out for. We'll also discuss the recent developments that have brought HMPV into the spotlight and the public health response to these concerns. Now, HMPV is a virus that many people may not be familiar with, but it's important to understand, especially given the recent increase in cases. Similar to other respiratory viruses like flu, HMPV can cause significant illness, particularly in vulnerable populations. In this episode, we'll break down the key information you need to know about HMPV, including preventive measures and recommendations to keep yourself and your loved ones safe. But before we delve into the conversation, we'll take a moment to reflect on the current situation. Countries like China and India have reported a surge in HMPV cases, prompting public health officials to take action. And while this may sound alarming, it's crucial to stay informed and understand the steps we can take to protect ourselves. Our goal today is to provide you with the knowledge and tools you need to navigate the situation with confidence. Again, our topic on Canvas, understanding HMPV, recent concerns, and what you need to know. My guest is Dr. Betty Agala. Dr. Betty Agala is the National Coordinator, Medical Women's Association of Nigeria, past President, M1 Rivers State, Vice Chairman, Nigeria Medical Association, Rivers State Branch, and she's currently the Acting Executive Secretary, Rivers State's Contributory Health Protection Program, RIV CHPP. Dr. Betty Agala, hello, you're welcome to Canvas and Niger-Delta Roundtable.
Thank you so much. It's Riv Chip.
Oh, Rift Chip.
Yes.
Okay.
Riv Chip.
Rift Chip it is then.
Thank you.
That's why we have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. I'm not the biggest rap head out there, but in the words and in the voice of DJ Khaled, and another one. It's another one again. It seems hardly a year goes by these days, and there isn't some kind of worldwide health scare. Something has been publicized. People are afraid for their lives, and notably, it appears to be respiratory related lately. And this is since the advent of the COVID. By the way, it appears that it's 1 year, one trouble for the whole world. Is that a thing? Is that what our lives are to become now? Before we get to the focus of today's conversation, let's start on this note. Is that what our lives are to become now, going forward? 1 year, one global health concern.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that, and it's not a 1 year one thing. If you look back, let's say the most recent scare was COVID, isn't it? And that was 2019, 2020. This is 2025, right? And let's say, okay, 2024.
We've had other things in between. We had the pox thing.
They've always been
We had
there.
other things.
They've always been there. And as you would find out, this latest scare has always been there. It's been there. So 4-5 years before then, we had the Ebola. So there's a concept around emerging and re-emerging diseases. Yeah.
Mm.
And like you said, fortunately, unfortunately, we're looking at respiratory diseases. And in the course of our conversation, I believe we're going to be talking about how people on their own can actually keep themselves safe and prevent these scares, as they are called. And I guess that's the essence of why we're here, to ensure that though you are in the mix of all of this, but you're safe. I think that's what we want to ensure that people are healthy.
Absolutely. But I need to ask you this before we proceed. Now, you used a phrase or an expression just now. You said emerging and re-emerging diseases. I believe that this, what we're discussing today, falls under the umbrella of re-emerging.
Absolutely.
So, if they've always been there, like you said, some of the diseases I mentioned a while ago, or some of the ones we've had to deal with recently, even on a global scale, if they've always been there, they've always been with us. They never went anywhere. Why then is there such a, if I may use the term, global alarm, about them, as it were?
I would think that if something had been there and it resurfaces, then probably there are conditions that have made it more um, viable, so to speak. And when we talk about reemergence, it means that even though they've always been there, they were not a threat. They were not a problem. Maybe few people were affected. But when you have an epidemic and a pandemic, you start seeing cases that are clearly in excess of the normal, and then it calls for concern. So it could be climate change, it could be anything really. But we found that there are seasonal um, resurgence of certain diseases. There are cyclical resurgence of certain diseases. And the human metapneumovirus is one of such. It's not like it's not always been there. It's been there, discovered as early as 2001, I think. And so today it's becoming a problem in China.
Mm.
So there may be conditions that have made that. And as we develop, something may be here, but if you don't have what it takes to see it, you won't see it. Right. If you don't have the right tests to find this out, you won't see it. You would assume it's not there.
What is the human pneumovirus, HMPV?
Yeah. So we've talked about it a bit. It is a what we call an RNA virus. RNA is ribonucleic acid, as against deoxyribonucleic. So I won't go into all of that jargon, but it's a virus. It's a pneumovirus. So it's a virus that affects the lungs and the respiratory tract. Okay. Discovered first, like I said, in the Netherlands in 2001 by a team of researchers led by a female, of course. I like
Of
the
course.
female, and at the time it was discovered, most of the people that were affected were children under 5. They found this respiratory infection in rising in hospital, children in the hospital, and also apparently healthy children. And so they had used the usual test for some other viruses, which they didn't find, and they felt, oh, there's something else here that we need to look into. And of course, all of the research work that had to be done. So that virus was discovered in 2001 in the Netherlands. And so it causes respiratory infection, usually mild to moderate. It's not very usual for us to have very severe cases, except, of course, there is a background suppressed immunity. And you can find that with maybe people that have some other underlying problems, or the extremes of age, maybe elderly, children under 5, and all of that. So that, in a nutshell, that's what that big name is about, and is affecting humans. Now, there was the avian, right? There's an avian strain that has been there. the avian metapneumovirus. It's been there longer, affecting the birds and all of that, but found in the 70s. But now this is a human strain. And if I go back to the question you're asking, it'll be like, okay, so why is that coming to humans? Because we're interacting with everything and anything, and the world is changing. That's all.
Maybe if we stopped eating chicken, we wouldn't have any avian
No,
issues.
you'll be shocked. You'll be shocked because having monkeypox is not related to eating monkey.
Oh well.
Exactly. So
Now, if the or since the HMPV is a respiratory illness, how does it compare to other respiratory illnesses? I mean, we had COVID, was a global issue recently, and maybe in some on some level still is, because like you said, they're always there anyway. And the flu and other such respiratory illnesses, how does HMPV compare to them?
yeah. So the studies that are done, and even in the China that we're looking at in focus, and India and all that, it is not just the HMPV that is causing the respiratory problems that they're having. So HMPV is respiratory virus, just like the respiratory syncytial virus, the flu, influenza, all of those viruses. What is similar is that they cause respiratory infections, and so symptoms are similar. What is different is that this is milder than the RSV and even a flu. So it's they're comparable, and as we see today, they are all the viruses at play currently that is bringing about the global concern that we have now.
Mm. All right. If we were to, I don't know if it's appropriate to do a ranking of of respiratory illnesses. If it were possible to do a ranking of sorts, where would HMPV be?
I think it will be down.
Okay.
I think it will be down in the ladder. Um, the RVS, SV, sorry, the flu, they seem to bring about more severe symptoms than HMVP. HMPV, yeah, acronyms and all of that. So if you're to rank it, um, I'll place it. So let's say COVID, RSV, flu, and then HMPV.
Mm.
That's my ranking. But you can only rank based on a population of that is affected.
Mhm.
Okay, you can't just rank it. So if you're ranking it here, the ranking may be slightly different from when you're ranking it in the northern hemisphere and wherever the weather and a lot of other climate changes and practices make it more prevalent.
Well, considering its ranking, so to speak, even though I do appreciate you said, I mean, the ranking depends, could vary from place to place,
Yes, and from a population to the other.
dependent on prevalent conditions, I suppose.
Absolutely.
That said, what recent developments have raised global concerns about HMPV? Why is it such a big deal now?
Yeah, I think in the second, third week of December last year, there was a significant rise in the number of hospital admissions and outpatient attendance in China, um, and linked to this particular virus. So a lot of people are coming down with infection from the human metapneumovirus. And so the entire world, I mean, we're a global village. And the way we are today as a people, as a country, as a nation in the globe is when anything is happening, the world is a global village. There's um, what do you call it? There's everywhere is together because people are traveling every day. I mean, Nigerians go to China, people are moving in and out of countries. And so if anything is happening, it becomes a global concern because, I mean, for instance, China is a center for a lot of innovation, and many people go there, trade, all of that. So from the 19th or thereabout of December, you know, the news by the China Center of Disease Control, saying that we're seeing so many cases on HMPV, and so everybody begins to look in, even if the WHO has come to say, okay, it's not that serious and all of that, but it's still something to look into. And it's still something for every other country to begin to think around our preparedness, because we know that such and such a thing happened just about 4 or 5 years ago. And that's how it started. It started with one country, and then before you know it, it became a pandemic, and all of us were affected. So it's something that if anything is happening anywhere, we need to know, and then we begin to come back and ask ourselves, how prepared are we if this were to escalate?
I don't mean to scare anyone, but are you suggesting that this could turn out to be the next COVID?
We don't know. Do you know what's going to happen the next minute? As at 15th December, for instance, did you know? Did you imagine? Nobody even thought that, oh, it's getting to another cycle of 4 years. Maybe something will come up. We didn't think about that. But now it has happened. We are now thinking about this time in 2019, such and such a thing happened. And it took us, I think for us in Nigeria, it took us 2, 3 months. By February, March, we were already dealing with COVID, isn't it? So nobody knows. The good thing is that this virus, like we've said, is, I don't want to say more benign, but like we ranked in this place, is our own ranking. We put it down as a virus that doesn't really cause on a normal day severe symptoms. So it shouldn't be so much of a problem. But nonetheless, we should be prepared.
How is it affecting the countries earlier mentioned, countries like China and even India as well, who have reported a surge in cases?
Yeah, so the usual protocols are being put in place, when there is such a disease, everything changes, right? There will be protocols on how to do things, where to go. Hospitals are being inundated with several cases, so it means you're going to be spending more. Other countries will begin to look at who is going into that country, who is coming from that country. And so, India, China, we in Nigeria, you know that there's a lot of bilateral interactions with this country, whether in trade, government, a lot of things happen. But today, with this news, you begin to look at who is going to China, why are they going, where are they going. You begin to check them out. So for me, that in itself is affecting the country beyond the burden that the health situation is bringing to the country. So, I mean, it's a big deal. China, India, they are now at the center of the world. Everybody's looking at how they will handle this and hope that we can contain it in country without it spreading beyond where it has spread to.
Speaking of burden, what impact does or could this have on public health?
Now, so public health, global health is impacted by different forms of outbreak, is impacted in numbers of people that are affected as individuals, as communities, is impacted. So there is now a burden on the health workforce and a lot of other things that make up the health system. So the health system is made up of leadership, human resource, consumables, drugs, vaccines, all of that. So you find that there's a lot of pressure on that. You would see that funding would tend to go towards curbing and controlling and containing that public health emergency that has come up. Structures in place. Most countries and most places, they have structures already. So moving from watch mode to alert mode to, so a lot of resources goes into that, a lot of resources. And so there's implication for public health because every part of the system is affected and is a global thing. So you can't stay in Nigeria and say, oh, it's not affecting us. It's affecting us because if people can travel or they have to go through a lot of processes or they need certain vaccines, for instance, so it affects everybody at the end of the day.
Now, you talked about it impact or effect on even China, for example, who's been reporting, large cases or increase in
Increased
cases at
number of
least.
cases.
And I believe watching in this case would also mean watching for symptoms in those persons. And even in countries that are not reporting any cases, like ours, for example, it's important to watch out for symptoms as well. You did mention symptoms earlier on. So, what are the symptoms of HMPV?
Yeah, so just to clear, when I talked about watching, there's a structure. Like we have the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, you have the China Center for Disease Control, for different diseases based on the expectation and what is happening around. You're either on a watch mode or you are on alert mode, or there are three. So it's either green, yellow, or red for you to take action. So for us here, we should be in a watch mode, right?
Is that yellow or green?
That's like yellow.
Okay.
That's like yellow because of the what word do I use now? Because we are a country that have international borders. People travel by road, by sea, and China is one of the destinations that people go to. India is one of the destinations people go to, even for medicals and all of that. So we should be on a watch mode. And it's because we're on a watch mode, that's why some of the things we have put in place, like we will talk about, is being done. So the symptoms are basically respiratory symptoms. So cough, catarrh, there may be a fever, there may be a chest pain, and that's it. So cough, catarrh, fever. So they're all just constitutional symptoms. Okay. Mostly the upper respiratory tract is affected, but when it becomes a bit more severe, you would have the lower respiratory, that the lung itself. And when it's that severe, then you begin to see some other things, which you can detect radiologically or in when you examine the person. But they all present as cough, as catarrh, as fever, sneezing, and all of that.
Just
Because
like any, go
just
on.
like any other, like any other respiratory infection, and you know that the modes of transmission are almost the same, and that's the similarity with the other pneumoviruses. So droplet infection, you touch a surface, contact, and all of that. So it's the same thing. It's not different, even from the COVID that we just managed to get out of a couple of years ago.
It is Canvas and Niger-Delta Roundtable. Thanks for joining us once again. On this edition, we're discussing the Human Metapneumovirus, HMPV. What you need to know to stay safe. My guest is Dr. Betty Agala. We go for a break now. We'll return in a moment. The discussion will continue. So please stay with us.
Our yellow and black markers indicate pipeline and flow line right-of-way boundaries. Your activity could impact on the buried high-pressure hydrocarbon pipelines and flow lines, leading to possible leaks and explosion. Please keep off. Do not engage in sand mining or any form of excavation, pipeline vandalism, oil theft, and bush burning within pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Do not farm, trade, or locate any business on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. It is against the law to apportion land, sell, or build on pipeline and flow line right of way. Maintain a setback distance of at least 30 meters or about 100 feet from the right of way boundaries always. We care for your safety and that of the environment.
This message is brought to you by the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, SPDC, operator of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, Total Energies, and Ajib Joint Venture.
Welcome back. This Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, brought to you by SPDC. I'm Dio, and we're discussing a recent concern. You may have heard of it. It's the Human Metapneumovirus, HMPV. There are increased reported cases in countries like China and India, and the world has taken notice of it, Nigeria inclusive. The things that you need to know to ensure your safety is all we're discussing on this episode. My guest is Dr. Betty Agala. Doc, you're welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have an idea. You've explained in some detail, not just an idea. I think I can say that I know now for certain what HMPV is. Just before we went on the break, you explained in some detail also what the symptoms are. Just constitutional, I think, is the word it's in describing.
Mostly.
Exactly. Just like almost any other
Flu.
respiratory illness or flu out there. So, if I develop these symptoms, a two-pronged question here now. So, if I develop respiratory symptoms, like almost any other respiratory symptom, what should my reaction and response be? And then the second part of my question, what steps can the individuals take to protect themselves from HMPV? Because it might be, is it entirely possible to protect yourself from a respiratory illness? I mean, almost every morning you wake up, you're sneezing, your nose is running for a bit. It goes away on its own without even having to take anything. So if we're not entirely completely shielded from respiratory illnesses, and please correct me if I'm wrong, what can we do to protect ourselves from HMPV?
All right. Thank you very much. So, let's not get to the point of having symptoms. I believe that our conversation is to get as many people globally that would listen to us to understand the importance of prevention. Prevention is always better. And then when we eventually, like you said, sometimes it's inadvertent, sometimes it just comes up. Then we have the steps to take to treat or to manage that situation. So, talking about prevention on a general scale, we are just the people who are not consistent. Something comes up like it's coming now, we run around and we set up things, we are scared, no, but that's not the way to respond. The way to respond is to have a systematic way and consistency in the things we do. So we started out with simple things as hand washing that not only prevents respiratory problems, because as we are human beings, today is HMPV. I keep mixing up that thing. That's why I call it full. Today it is HMPV. Tomorrow it will be something else. Last couple of years it was COVID. But one thing is central. Everybody washing hands as often as possible. Washing hands at a minimum of 20 seconds with soap and running water. That prevents so many diseases beyond respiratory, even gastrointestinal, and a lot of diseases. So we're talking about preventive measures. We're talking about healthy living. We're talking about lifestyle modification, because it saves us literally when we are able to do simple things that can either prevent us from having diseases, or even when we have them, they are not as devastating. They become mild and easier to manage. So the first thing I would like to say is that everyone should ensure that they wash their hands clean. Children, adults, I recall during COVID, it was like you have to wash your hand, and so we're doing it as though it's in response to that issue, but it should be a lifestyle. So you wash your hands, ensure that you have a good health seeking behavior. So you get vaccinated for the vaccines that are available to prevent one disease or the other. And we have some pneumococcal vaccines. We have some vaccines that actually prevent viruses that are respiratory. Get to know what is available and do that. Clean surfaces. Wear face mask. Those are things that individuals can do. And those are things that policies can enforce, right? And keep people healthy. So it's like I've taken the second bit of your question and now I go back to the first. So when you have a cough or a sneeze or a catarrh, you need to understand from where we started that it doesn't suddenly become a HMPV, because there are sundry things that can cause a respiratory infection, bacterial, viral, like these ones. And so just the common flu can give you the same symptoms of feeling of unwell, fever, cough, catarrh, sometimes chest pain. So it's not to go with the fear that, oh, could this be COVID? Oh, could it be HMPV, right? That's the first thing, know that it could just be a regular flu. Once you're sure that you're doing other things that you need to do, there is no treatment for HMPV, right? And currently there is no vaccine. There are vaccines that are in the works. They're working on it because of the avian strain that was there before. There is a vaccine that's in the works, but currently there are no vaccines specific to this virus. But there are other respiratory preventive vaccines that we can use. So making sure that if you have a headache, you have a fever, you take acetaminophen, which is paracetamol, ibuprofen, and all of that. So what we do is to manage the symptoms. Usually viral infections are self-limiting. They run their course. So we have a 4 to 6 day incubation period for HMPV. So you understand how that works. You find that in a few days you should, feel better. But if you don't, of course, you now ensure that you go and see your healthcare provider. And based on the history, because history of traveling, are you coming from China? When did you come from China? If you're coming India, and all of that. So we take histories and try to pin down what could possibly be the cause of this. And once it is suspected, of course, there is a reporting line. We have the disease notification officers at the level of the LGAs, I think, and then that can be escalated to the state. Samples are taken and investigations done. So for me, I think that's the way to go. First of all, is prevention. And the preventive measures are the things we've already known. We've always known them. It's just to remind ourselves that these can be a way of life. It's not because COVID is coming or HMPV is coming, so you begin to wash your hands.
Speaking of preventive measures, and earlier on you referenced what you described as systems and consistency. And vis-a-vis also what you just said, things that we already know, things that we did in the past when we all scared for our lives during the COVID global pandemic. Should we go back to the era of mask mandates in addition to washing our hands and all of that?
That's what I said. Maybe not mandate, but you as an individual, and I think I see people wearing face masks around. The weather currently that we have, right? You find that we started out in December with the harmattan, so you see the humid, dry dust. You don't need somebody to tell you to put on a mask. It's for your good. You don't need somebody to tell you that you should, we say that you should avoid contact with sick persons, right? Avoid contact with sick animals, sick persons, and all of that. But these are things we should just continue to do without somebody coming to enforce. So if I'm to, I mean, this 1 hour or 50 minutes or whatever what we have here, if we're able to let people know that those things we did when we thought we were going to die of COVID, can we just do them as a way of life? Wash our hands frequently, clean our surfaces, disinfect, wear face masks where need be, get vaccinated, because prevention is always better. There are people who even the money they had couldn't really save them when it mattered much. And when diseases are coming up, we are still trying to understand them. I'm sure we experienced that with COVID, and then the protocols had to be adjusted and readjusted and all that. Because as it comes up, you continue to study it and then you find what works.
Mm.
Let's not let ourselves to be in that situation where you are the guinea pig.
Now, I know you touched on it, maybe even somewhat elaborately just a while ago, but for emphasis sake, and so nobody misses it in the course of this conversation, um, at what stage or point should I be concerned if I do have respiratory symptoms? And like I mentioned a while ago, and I think you agreed, it's not unusual that every other day a person might have respiratory symptoms. I mean, I had, some symptoms a couple of days ago. The nose just gets clogged up. You have, itchy throats, a little slight cough, all of that. Sometimes it just runs a course. And you said viruses are
Mostly they run a course.
exactly, and it just goes away. So at what point should a person who has respiratory symptoms become concerned? And then what should they do?
Right. So not just respiratory symptoms. Every time you have a symptom, that is something happening to you that is not normal. So whether it's a cough, whether it's a fever, whether it's a sore throat, whether it's a chest pain, whether it's stooling, vomiting, anything, there are over-the-counter medications that can be taken. And if symptoms persist after 2 days, when I was a kid, it was a regular thing that they would tell you, if you've tried home remedies, you've tried this, and symptoms persist after 1 to 3 days, you consult your doctor. That's the teaching. It hasn't changed. We're not saying self-medicate. Self-medication is not about you have a fever or a headache, you take paracetamol. No. There are drugs that are clearly over the counter. But the need to see a physician is so that a proper diagnosis can be made. It's not everything that is malaria, because all of these things I've said could just be symptoms of malaria. I'm sure you know that. So everybody assumes that, oh, if I have a fever, if I have this, then it's malaria. And some people tell you, this is how my malaria presents. And oh, if you treat malaria, you would feel better, because those constitutional symptoms will abate. But if the problem was not malaria ab initio, they will resurface. And thus the need to escalate. So if you go to the hospital, that's where a suspicion can be made, and that's where it can be escalated. So if symptoms persist, and that's me saying, if symptoms persist after 2 and 3 days, please consult your doctor. And you will not be afraid of consulting your doctor if you are covered by a form of health insurance, because then you are not afraid of payment or no payment. If you have health insurance cover, usually once you have that slightest complaint, you run to the hospital.
And of course, you've been the acting.
Yes, I always rope it into whatever I'm saying.
At a rift chip. Well, I mean,
Yes.
I'm sure we're going to have a conversation
Yeah.
on the podcast on rift chip very soon. But
Yes,
health
sir.
insurance, no doubt. I mean, it's everything. Could be the
Yeah.
difference between life and
Life
death.
and death, literally.
Mm.
Literally.
You
It
talked
could
about
be.
vaccines a while ago, and there's no vaccine for HIPV at the moment. But you suggested, I think, that there's work being done in that regard. I know that there are conspiracy theorists when it comes to vaccines, but we're not focusing on them right now. Um, but there could be some genuine concern from some persons also, because it appears for every ailment now, it seems that we might be working on a vaccine. If we do become successful, and hopefully we do become successful at,
Mm.
creating these vaccines, how many, this is an aside now, how many vaccines might we have to take
Uh,
eventually?
well, so what we're saying is, for now, for instance, there's the Mpox vaccine. It's now available for health workers. Vaccines are not exactly for everybody, right? And not all diseases affect everybody, so to speak. There's usually a predilection for certain populations, certain groups of people. And if and when HMPV arrives Nigeria, because by the time it's arriving, it means they will expedite because they know that Nigerians are everywhere. I think we are part of the people that make things to happen faster. So and then they want to try out these things, on us. I don't know about how many vaccines we possibly have to take, but you know that vaccine preventable diseases over the years have been the killer diseases for children. Today we have children. We have all of us are adults. We have children growing up that don't have to die from a vaccine preventable disease. So the importance of vaccines cannot be overemphasized. When they are made available, I think that we should take advantage of that. It is like saying there's AI, there's how to do things better, and you just say that, oh no, they want to. You will be there where you are. There are people that are using the thing and making benefiting from it. You say vaccine is not working or it's to kill everybody. Why would somebody want to kill everybody? So yes, we have anti-vax, but like we always say for antenatal, women who carry pregnancy, and they did carry pregnancy, go to the farm, deliver, come back, nothing happened to them. It is for that one person, two women, three women who may have a complication that during the antenatal process you can either find early, or because of their attendance you're able to intervene on time. I always say that everything is not for everybody. But woe betide you that they bring something for you and you refuse it. Then it's at your detriment. So that's my thought. So if you have vaccine for this, that, and it's something that is common to us, hey, take it and prevent the problem and move on. We took COVID vaccine. They said this, that, but we are here.
Absolutely.
We're here. We have not died. We've not stopped becoming reproductive. Metals are not hanging on to us. So these things, propaganda will continue to come up. It's the way of the world. But think about you, your loved ones, and the people that can be saved, people that don't have to die because you sit down doing nothing.
What has been the nature of response or preparedness, if you will, of government at different levels in the country since the reports from China and India?
Yeah, so there was a news a few days ago that even our federal airport authorities have started to put measures in place. What really can you put is to check the people who are coming in or going out, from these countries. You want to know their vulnerabilities. You want to check their temperature. You want to check that they are vaccinated. You want to check their exposures. Where did they go to? So those measures are in place. And our Nigeria Center for Disease Control, I believe they are alert. They are, beyond watching their alerts, so that if anything, just like we had, um, the COVID coming, and they were able to get that one person, and all of that. So the same thing with Ebola. So we are at alert and ready. Down to the states, we have the Public Health Emergency Operations Center that is on alert mode. We are waiting. We are not just watching. We are waiting because, of course, River State, for instance, has an international border, so people can travel from here outside of the country. So every state, for instance, in Nigeria that has an international airport or a land border or a sea border should be on alert mode, because someone could be flying in from there. You want to do a kind of surveillance based on the incubation period you want to know, because if they had had a contact, then it would take such and such number of days for any symptom to come up. And then, so that's how it works while you're putting together resources in case of an emergency.
You
So,
mentioned a while ago that the focus is prevention.
prevention.
So at community level, and by community, I mean, we have different kinds of communities. We
Yeah.
have work communities, professional communities, village communities,
Yeah.
ethnic, neighborhood. At community level, what should we be doing to provide support for each other, and especially increasing prevention?
Yeah. So, water supply is always a problem. But we shouldn't shut down our sinks and whatever water receptacles we had for hand washing. So individuals wash their hands, but in the community, whether it's a school, community, workplace, you should have the presence of mind to prevent. So hand washing is key. We won't begin to talk about 2 meter distance and all that. But you should know that when you cough, when you sneeze, the way we are taught to do that into our elbow. If you cough into a handkerchief or a tissue, you discard, you wash your hands, so people can help others. If people are ill, you can support them without really just being inside of all of the symptoms, right? So support ourselves, taking fluid, as simple as hydrating and rehydrating ourselves is something that can be done to prevent HMPV and other problems. People who are asthmatic are more susceptible because you already have a background respiratory problem or a chronic obstructive airway disease. So those people are extra careful using the face mask. So if you too want to cough, how to help your neighbor is to cough. This is a podcast, so I'm sure people can see.
Absolutely.
So you cough into your elbow. Sometimes we cough into our hands, and then we use the hand to touch everywhere,
And shake someone else.
to shake someone, to touch. So you're not just doing this for yourself, you're also doing it for your community, the people that come around you. There are people who can um, deal with exposure because their immune system is better, but there are some other people who are not as strong, that face the same thing you face and come down with symptoms. So building up our immunity is something we can do as communities. Eating right, cutting down on alcohol and cigarettes. These are basic lifestyle things that touch on how strong your immunity could be. So communities can look around ensuring that people have meals, as simple as people having meals, because there are some people that don't have what to eat to even stay healthy. You can do that. And you would think that there's no direct effects, but there is an indirect effect to the prevention of HMPV. So we can help ourselves. We can put things in place in schools, ensure that there's running water, that children can wash their hands. And even then, when we didn't have the taps running, we had the, what do you call that thing? Is it Victoria bottle? There's a bucket,
Okay.
that has a tap. that you could use. People use pure water, just to have the running tap thing. So you help this person, the person help. We can all help ourselves and make sure that we put things in place to keep all of us healthy. Public health is about health promotion. It's about disease prevention. Before we get on to treatment and all of that, it's about prolonging life. So basic things that people need to do to prolong life is to ensure that they take care of the hygiene. They keep themselves and their environment clean. Simple.
All said and done, would it be wise for me to conclude then that HMPV is not such a big deal
It's not
and we
such a
shouldn't?
threat.
Uh,
It's, I mean, life itself is a risk, if you know what I mean. It may not be HMPV that's maybe your problem, but my counsel is stay healthy, and to stay healthy is to eat right. To stay healthy is to be hygienic, is to have a good health seeking behavior. What we have said here is not different from what we would say if we were talking about some other disease, apart from the specifics of some other infection. You know. So keep your food clean, keep your environment, everything, because it's all together, it's one human being. So everything you do fits into keeping this human being healthy. And we need you healthy. We need everybody strong and healthy. Prevention, they say, is better than cure. We don't gain anything from anybody dying for something that can be prevented.
And that's a wrap for this edition of Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable. We have discussed recent concerns regarding the human metapneumovirus, HMPV. What you need to know to stay safe, of course, you and your loved ones. And as my guest has mentioned consistently, prevention is key. However, do not fret over this. There's nothing to be overly worried or concerned about. Don't run helter-skelter. But stay safe, practice safe and hygienic practices to ensure you stay safe and your loved ones. Especially thanks to my guest, Dr. Letty Ajala. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening and for watching.
Absolutely. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day. Remember, the program is brought to you by SPDC. I'm Adid Dayo Obishaki. Stay safe. Bye for now.